All right.
Hey, well, first of all, welcome everybody to the No Dice, No Glory HMGS Roundtable. And tonight we have a special guest who I begged to be here, Uwe Eickert from Academy Games, one of my favorite game designers. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. And it's a beautiful, gray, cold day out today. So it's a good way to end it here.
Yeah, and I so appreciate it. So, I with some of the other folks that we're interviewing, I send all this scripted stuff, but I've interviewed you before. And I keep telling people there's some people in the community that are really easy interviews. You are one of them. So I wasn't worried about this. I didn't send the script ahead of time. And then folks, when you're listening, just send, if we keep it to a small group, I'll unmute you so you can ask questions directly. But if not, throw stuff in the chat. So let me ask you first foremost question. One small step.
Yes.
It is. So everybody knows I'm a huge fanboy of your Conflict of Heroes games. Storms of Steel, one of my favorite game systems. And it's Academy Games has done non-war games, but historical. Tell us about One Small Step.
One small step, as you can see on the screen, people want to see it. It is a 2 to 4 player game, and it follows you're playing either the Soviet or the American space agencies. And it's probably one of the most unique games that I've seen with worker placement type of tactics, because as the Americans, one player plays the engineering staff and the other player plays the administrative staff. And then as the Soviets, same thing, engineering, tech, and then the administrative. And together as a team, you're trying to advance the space, get the most prestige in the space program through launching satellites, unmanned satellites, and then manned missions towards the moon. And you're trying to build up your engine with technological advancements, getting your resources, both for human resources, HR, money, PR, then the satellite unmanned missions, and then life support, landing, everything else with the crewed missions. And you are building this together. On the Earth map, there are different places where you're going to be placing your worker placements. So each engineer has 2 workers, each admin has 2 workers, and each area is where you want to concentrate on. If you're going through a tech, if you're trying to go for PR, because you have to have good PR so that you get funding, so that the public support is behind it in America and in the Soviet Union, so you keep your job and also get the funding, et cetera, et cetera. When you place one of your workers' tokens, either as the administrative or engineer, in one of these areas, you take that action, but you can only, as the engineer, take the engineering action, since each area is tech or the admin or engineering. So if I, as the engineering player, play the engineering, I'm keeping my opponents. Let's say we're playing the Americans. I'm keeping the 2 Soviet players from being able to place on that area. But on top of that, I'm keeping my fellow player from being able to place there. So let's say the fellow player is going, man, we need funding, we need HR, we need cash, we need the money to get these next missiles going right. And just to take care of, if something happens that we don't know about, we're low on funds, we need the funds. And the engineer goes, nah, we don't need the funds as much as I need to really get the development. And we got to figure out how this Velcro works or duct tape or whatever. And he does it. Well, he's not only stymieing the opponents, but also yourself, a fellow player. And that really brings about a really interesting dynamic, because that's historically what happened. And if you're just ignoring as engineering and you're going too heavy against admin to get the money, the human resources, getting the politicians on your side, getting the marketing and the PR and the TV time and everything, well, then Congress won't fund everything. and then your opponents have the advantage and get different things. So it's a really fun, interesting game, and everybody who's the reviewers of it so far have said it's one of the most down to earth, true experience they're having of playing a game with the space race at that time, and also getting a feel of the people and what they were worried about and the things that went wrong. Because often you're getting hazards when you're trying to launch your satellites and your manned missions. You can place them in T-2, T-1, or T-1, and then that goes forward every round till it gets to the launch point. When you have the launch, you need to have the resource, you have to have the research, you have to have everything set, but then your opponent's placing hazard cards on you, or you do something that created some type of hazard possibility, and you don't know what hazards they are. So you want to make sure that you have enough resources to cover yourself. If you don't, you fail. And then things go down for you. You get bad PR. You get people in Congress ticked off, or the hierarchy firing your butt, and then someone else comes in, which kind of hurts you on your quest. The game is over the first person to reach the moon, but that doesn't mean they win. You get another 7 prestige victory by landing on the moon, but the team wins that has the most, that's done the most for the space race. So there's a lot of little subtleties in there. You can even, when you're launching your manned missions, you then choose an area on the Earth map, which is giving you the different type of options of research and everything you can do. And you uncover then additional benefits, because the further on the technology went, the more things you can do, the more resources you had to really, and science you developed to really get ahead. So when you uncover one of these areas, you get those benefits, but your opponents do also. Because that's just the way it is. When the Russians were successful with something, it got out, and then we knew they could do it, and boom, we went after it. So this competition between the Soviets and Americans was very interesting when you're looking at it, and it's a medium to light game, but the subtleties, it's all in how you're playing against each other.
Well, it wouldn't be an Academy Games game if it didn't have mechanics that are very deep but easy to play. So this game goes really from pre-Sputnik all the way to the 70s.
Yes.
So it's really more than just a lunar game, and it kind of reminds me of a game that was on computer and tablet, Buzz Aldrin's space thing, and where it was a space management game. But I'll tell you what, it wasn't a fun game. Once you kind of figure out how the AI works, you kind of know how things happen. It's good to see like a game like, and I haven't played One Small Step. I'm sorry I missed the Kickstarter. To see a game where you can have fun with other people going. Does that mean we
haven't sent you a copy yet?
No, you have not.
Oh.
I'll send you my address later on today. And I feel bad for missing the Kickstarter because it's a long story, and I'll email it to you. But you guys, who came to you with this idea?
James Dumont did, and he used to work in, or he still does, in the satellite programs and program satellites and all that. So he has a great interest in that. And he came to us with really a good idea. And then Gunther and Jim Schoch in our development team really worked with them for a year and a half. And together, the three of them just took the original idea and just turned it upside down, and it came up with a really unique little game. So we're very happy with it. We went to distributorship for stores last week, and they called me after 3 days. It was sold out. So I spent today driving. We still had a few here, driving them to Lines distribution so that they had a few extra. Well, and then the rest are going all overseas and everywhere. So we're like in panic mode, having to reprint already, and it hasn't even hit the stores yet. So very happy with the results on One Small Step.
I am sending my address as we speak. So when they came to you with this game, you're like, space game.
It was at he just hit us up at, I think it was at Origins.
That makes sense.
And he said, I got this game. We're like, yeah, another guy, we're not here to play test. We're here to sell and everything. And we're so tired at night. And then he started talking to us what it was about. And we're like, that sounds really good. So we had him in our play test area. In Origins, we have a main area that's 20 by 30, and then another area that's always like 30 by 40. So we've got two pretty big areas at Origins for our demoing, play testing, then our main booth area. So after the show, we sat down with 3 games we thought were good. And we always have designers sit in with us to play the other people's games. And that's where we look at it. And it's a great place to really analyze and really tear it apart for things, because a designer wants to play their entire game through so you see how it plays. But when you play about 48 new games every week that get sent to you, it's like playing music. A good jazz musician, you can start playing and they can be never heard the song before in their life. And after 30 seconds, you point to them for them to take a break, and they take a break. It's me with a fiddle when I'm playing bluegrass or something. I never heard a song before. They say break, you got the feeling, the flow, how the music and the circle fifth with your seventh and everything going in, and then you're jazzing it up. It just goes. Yeah, hear it, go. So we know after 5 to 10 minutes if it's good or not. And 90% of the time, or 10% of the time, we're like amazed, going, holy cow, this is phenomenal, perfect. And then 90% of the time, it's like, wow, this is a really good game. Of which 10% of those we go, we'd really like to work on this and continue developing with you. And this was one of the cases there where we sat, and Gunther and I and Jim, we just started going with ideas back and forth, boom, 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 for like half an hour. And poor Jim James DeMond was just sitting there like, I said, just record it and go through it later, because this is a great thing of getting a group with us. It's all this synergy and ideas that develop. And within half an hour, so much has been thought up with all these different published designers that it's probably the best way for any designer to really have their game analyzed and often taken to the next level, because then the designer can take that and go home and go, holy cow, I by myself was jumping up and down on the floor, but all of a sudden I was with 3 other guys and we're just bouncing, and now I was jumping on a trampoline. So I'm getting so much higher and seeing new things and experiencing it totally differently, that it really allows them to go with it. And when we do that, we don't say, oh, this is how it has to be. No, we just start exploring things and said, think about this, think about this, think about this. And some designers say, no, this is my baby. I'm not changing it, period. And
well, we're like, you could go somewhere else, right?
We're right away go, oh, you know what? You're probably right. Hey, good luck.
Yeah.
And then others are like, wow, that's a good idea. How about this? And we're like, boom, 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 boom. And those are usually the best guys. And most designers are that way, the professional guys, meaning they may have never designed a game before, but if they're in any type of social or corporate or working with other people, you know how you got to live in life.
Yeah.
You can't be the dictator of your department and expect to be successful. And same with game design.
And it's funny, we're going to skip over my next question of which side has the better Germans, the Soviets or the Americans. And we'll go to my game design question. That's that line from, what was that? The Right Stuff. Our Germans are better than theirs. I've talked to you before about game design, and I find that you can discuss it. You're a process guy. I think it's really refreshing. One of the things I think folks out there, first of all, every wargamer thinks they could design a better game than any game they're playing. And we all know that's not true. And we see this a lot in social media. And I come to your defense on Facebook all the time, where they're like, I don't like this, or this should be in the game. And I do this for a lot of developers. I go, Well, why don't you talk to them about designing your own game? Well, that's a lot of work. People don't understand how much work and research. Now, you said that this game was brought to you a year and a half ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, 2 Gen Cons ago, yes. So it took
That's
2 years to get it to the market.
That's fast
It
for a
actually is
game like
pretty
this.
fast. Yeah, especially with all the artwork, the historical context, and that's where you need a really good designer who's passionate about it, who can pull that in.
You have that passion.
Well, I'm talking about the designer themselves.
Oh, okay.
I
You're the
mean, we have
developer.
passion. If we like the game and all, the passion's there, but we're not going to sit there and go through all the historical research and all that, because everybody has their own specialties and own heavy interests. Mine, of course, is a different type of tactical things throughout history and also modern day, combat cohesion, suppression, things like that, and how can we, with our American tactics, take advantage of battlefields in ways that aren't sending guys and bombing the shit out of it and putting our guys in danger, more the psychological and all that. And then lately I've been getting heavy into the Native American plights in America, because with our freedom games, now I'm working with a lot of the Native leaders from Native national councils on doing games and teaching games that are fun to play, but teaching and bringing to light the history.
I want you
like
to
the
know
Cherokee and things like that, not only during the American Revolutionary War, but then going forward all the way into the 20th century. And so that's right now where I'm putting all of my research and effort and communications. And it's incredible. Again, that gets your passion going, because I'm one of these people who I can't be niched in one little field all my life and become the expert in this, because my God, you die of boredom after a while.
I know that, and once again, I didn't send you the questions ahead of time, but you're going in the order of my questions. So, and that's why I love interviewing you. So let's talk about education in games. Your Birth of America, Birth of Europe series, your Underground Railroad games. When teachers come to me and ask me, what is a good war game or a board game that I can use to teach, I recommend those games. I feel, I'm a huge fan, as we know. I feel that when you're trying to teach the subject, I think those games are amazing. Do you find those games harder or easier? Do you design a game with education in mind, or it just turns out that way through the magic of development?
Well, every one of our Academy games, we try to put the historical and educational aspect into it, depending on what you want to get out of it. If it's educating adult people from a standpoint of tactics training to for high school or junior high, we don't go kind of below that. And we have many games that we have great ideas that are just sitting there percolating. You just run out of time, especially with COVID right now. It's been horrible. I mean, I have a game that is just based on the founding fathers and the whole convention, everything that went on at that time, because I think it's so critical to look at that and analyze why everybody fell where they were, because it is very difficult for people at our stage in history, with our morals, our norms, our societal structure, our information feed and everything, to be able to neutrally stand back and analyze what happened at a different time period without bringing in real big personal biases.
Of course,
and trying to bring that to light so that people learn what happened, what was going on, I think is very key, and that makes a game a lot of fun.
How do you gamify the Constitutional Congress?
I'm sorry?
How do you gamify the Constitutional Congress?
Exactly, and we have some really good ideas on that, and I'm a big fan of the Twilight Struggle. That's one of the best games.
Who isn't?
Ever.
Who isn't?
Well, you know, you and I know and our listeners, hey, you might as well unmute Tyler there also. I mean, Tyler's probably got something to say unless he's listening to some
jazz.
Well, no, I was thinking of like some cheesy Hallmark movie in the background.
No. You wouldn't get him there at a war game. You know, so there was a game that came out that there's a bunch of guys I work with that we're all war gamers at work, and we're war gamers when we're not at work. And there was a game that two of us got. We didn't tell each other. It was the Versailles game that came out from GMT. And I'm thinking, how do you gamify the Treaty of Versailles? And let me tell you, we played it the other night on Vassal.
Uh-huh.
And you talk about, you know, you don't have to be a student of history. There's only 4 nations in the game to understand how to play that game. And the way they did the rules, I thought was really unique. And it kind of got me thinking.
Worth playing? I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
Worth getting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, look, I'm going to talk about your games plenty because I'm a huge fan.
I don't care. You know what?
Yeah.
I have to talk about my games all day long. I don't give a crap about talking about my games. It's talk about whatever. And now you're turning me on Versailles by GMT, right?
I believe it is. And I'll tell you what, I'll get 2 other guys and we will, or I'll get 1 other guy, you get Gunther, and we'll play on Vassal one night when we all have free time because we have so much of it. And that's something too, as we move, you know, now I'm starting to see innovative ways to game things that I didn't think were gameable when I started this hobby in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Things like the Constitutional Congress Declaration of Independence. There are certain like the Treaty of Versailles. Are game developers just getting better?
Well, the game market's developing. The game market's developing. The entire way games are designed, the game engine, the structure, the interface, and everything is developing and getting so much better than it was. And the entire game structure of where it used to be roll a die, go so many spaces, and do A or B.
Yeah.
You know, the Ameritrash type of game. Whereas nowadays it's much more open, saying you have these resources. This is your objective. How are you going to take these objectives with the limited resources you are successfully? And I think that's one of the key things. And that's especially, I think, with a lot of the military training games that have been gone in the past. They were so complicated. And I'm seeing a real shift in
too complicated.
They are, and it's almost crazy, and not only what the military themselves internally develop, because half the guys who are developing the games in the military are like regular gamers. They all think they're designers. Just because you can swing a golf club doesn't mean you're Tiger Woods. And even what I see, what came out of Rand and everything, it's shifting now. It's definitely shifting, because in the old days, everybody is just you'd play and the participants could not grasp what their objectives were, what their resources were, what their guiding principles were, what the main hindrances were. They had to be spoon-fed this by the designers or the other people running the simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, oh, okay, I want to do this. And then they go, oh yeah, you can do that or you can't. So they weren't taught to do the critical thinking of these are my resources. This is my objective. Now my brain is going to go through this all and figure out the best way, like good gamers can do, who've been doing it over and over, because we've been taught the more games you play, it's like going to college. We're taught to critically think and look at something, pull back, and then take a tactic to get to my objectives and still beat the other guys trying to do the same thing.
You know, what you say is so true about military game developers, but I'm going to introduce you to, actually I asked him to come and speak. He runs the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, and he has a game called Assassin's Mace that I've done all the play testing for with
Who's
him.
that? Mark? Is it Mark?
Mark,
Gelston.
No, I'm thinking of Tom Varick. He's a colonel in the Marines.
Oh, okay.
Tom Varick.
Yes.
And so you know, you should.
Well, I know the guy who designed the game.
Yeah.
Colonel Barrick. Yeah, he's. I've been over there. I've played the game.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I critiqued it 2 years ago, and Mark and the guys who are working on that, they have they have they have gone places, and that's why the lab there is so good, and what Colonel Barrick's doing and everything,
Right.
because I see what they're doing. They were very old school in many ways.
Hmm.
You come in and you give ideas and this bouncing back and forth and say, why don't you do this and this and this? And then the next time I come back, they've taken what I did and gone up here, and I'm like, son of a bitch, that's a
Yeah.
great idea. Here, let me take some notes. I'm going to use that,
Yeah. It is what they've done. And let me explain to the audience out there is I am my day job is I war game and try to create war games for the Air Force. And I get asked by the other services to play in their games, to play test it. And the Marine Corps uses a module that's in Vassal called Assassin's Mace. And I've done 2 of the play testing. I've been Red Air and Blue Air. I like playing Blue better because I know their capabilities. And I'll tell you why I think it's going to succeed as a great game to train and to use, especially when you're looking at, hey, what should we budget for? Because there's an element of fun in the game. And I think, and I'm going to bash the old heads from, and I'm not Peter Perla, don't get upset, but like military wargaming for so many years didn't have that element of fun. People hated to war game. I think if you throw a little bit of that in there, I noticed with some of the games I've recently run that these are very competitive A-type people.
Right.
And if you throw that element in there, I noticed they get more into the movie of the game, as we call it.
Yeah.
So, and it's great. And, I spoke at Georgetown a few weeks ago, and I said, where have I learned the most from? And I said, believe it or not, it's not from the professional wargaming community. It's from guys like you in the hobby wargaming community, because that is where the good ideas are coming from. And I asked everybody, this is Sebastian Bay's class, and you probably know who he is too. I said, look, if you're not a hobby gamer, become one, or go to hobby gaming events, because you will see ideas. Yep. And a process there that will help you develop games. And I've taken some of your games to work, and it's to teach people mechanics, where if and I'll get into your Conflict of Heroes games, which I love. Does this accurately represent what it's supposed to? Not from a historical standpoint, not, what's the rate of fire of the MG34 vice the PPSK, but from a tactical standpoint, they're good takeaways and lessons you could take from this and apply. And then what do you think of the mechanics? That is something that I think gamers, especially military gamers, need to learn. We need to teach. But I think that is where so many of the great ideas are coming from. And
having the players actually do the critical thinking themselves, because they also have to be taught. I've seen lieutenant colonels and colonels coming in, and even 1-stars coming in, playing a simulation, and they're just sitting there getting fed, and then they make this heuristic biased decision based on what in the past, but you're setting them up in this game to have to critically think their way around it, and then it gets crushed, and they're like, I hate this game. This sucks.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the game development has to go more. And just computer gaming, of course, field exercises are critical. And field exercises, unfortunately, teach teamwork, teach the tactics, teach how to run a battalion, a corps, whatever your level is. But it also has a tendency of, especially the higher you go, you're getting inundated with so much information.
Oh, yeah.
That often, a blinder has to go up at some point, and you just got to go with your gut feel. Now, hopefully the guys who are in charge of that are good enough that their gut feel is hopefully still based on a lot of critical thinking and thought. And that's where I grew up, because, my uncle Rolf and all that was with the 6th Panzer and other guys who, when we were in Venezuela and Puerto Rico, it was just all French and Germans, and I got that perspective. And they're like,
right.
we would do stuff that our enemy expected so that we could do other stuff at the same time that they weren't expecting, so we could take advantage of that situation over and over and over again. And like Fritz Rahl, who was with Rommel and everything in Africa,
you need to come with subtitles for those who don't understand German, but he's talking about Field Marshal Rommel. Well, you say it prettier than I do.
Oh, was I did not go into German, did I?
A little bit. But you pronounce it German.
Ach so, ja.
Yeah.
Rommel, ich meine, das muss man so sagen. Aber he was in the Spanfair, in the recon and everything that they were taught and trained to do was you have to act the way that the English or the Americans expect you, how they expect you to act.
Mm-hmm.
And if they expect us to act in a certain situation in a certain way, then they know we have to go this way because that's what their brains tell them has to happen. So if they're expecting you to do that, we don't really have to do it because they're expecting us to send the extra support troops and extra logistics and all that if they see this battalion going forward. A battalion, it's suicide to go forward on its own without support. We all know that. So we know they're not going to do that. Well, you do that so that then you have your other assets. So you got to really, hopefully, the critical thought and thinking. And our military nowadays is incredible. I think it's the best it's ever been. I mean, our education, the way they're trained and everything is phenomenal. But
by the way, remember 2 years ago, we spoke on the phone for the first time, and you asked me, like, what are the things that if you wish you could game or game better, what would it be? And I think I told you cyber was one of them. Now it's this JADC2, the Joint All Domain Command and Control. And I will send you a little brief on it.
Oh, thank you.
Just to get your mind, because you talked about information. And right now, leaders are getting too much information where they have analysis paralysis. How do you feel that gaming can help them flatten that curve, to use a modern statement?
Well, we read a lot. People go, what war books are you reading? I'm reading psychology more than anything.
Yeah, well, yes, you do.
And the thing is where most people don't realize that the main psychological advancements aren't coming from the psychologists in the armed forces or in the police departments and all. It's coming from totally different areas, much of it. And they're making such good advancements on how the human brain works. And of course, they're looking at it from a different angle, but they're making so much progress that these guys don't see. So I think there has to be a much more open communal type of learning. And it's going there now because with the internet and all, it makes it so easy. But you're 100% right. They have to be trained, and through gaming and everything else, their brains have to be trained to be able to take in more than 5 different sets of information coming in at the same time, and being able to categorize it, quickly analyze, put aside, what do I need the most, and then still be able to have the wherewithal then to stand back and go, okay, this is all I have. You got to train the brain to do that. And I don't know, I do every day. I do brain through Lumosity and everything. I do brain training through that. I do through different type of exercises just to keep my brain taking in lots of information. I on purpose, if I have to do accounting or books or whatever, I'll take a 8 or 10 string number, and instead of doing 4 at a time and entering it all, just look at it and train yourself just to take it in, and then maybe talk with someone, but then being able to pull it out short term, medium, long term. So it's all training, and you have to train the brain, especially people who are going to be under stress. It's easy to analyze and make decisions when you're not under stress.
Yes.
But when shit hits the fan, stupid stuff happens.
I went to your briefing at Connections.
What's that?
And I went to your briefing at Connections, and I had a lot of takeaways from that about thinking. And here I am adjudicating or helping adjudicate a major war game a month and a half ago. And I'm like, okay, you're under fire. And this is a theater-wide game. They're not really under fire.
Yeah.
Tell me what is 1, 2, and 3 the most important things. And there's a lot I took away from your briefing. And that is something that, once again, I set you up for a question here. It's the, yes, we talked about you're studying psychology. And do you feel that that makes games better? Because you're putting the player where they constantly have to think. One of the things I love about, and I have all 4 games in the series and all the addendums, I'm pointing at them, you can't see it. What I like about that game system is you constantly have to think. You have to think
for the Birth of America and all that.
What was that?
For the Birth of America series, the Conflict of Heroes, or?
Well, I have both series, so
okay.
it's hard to say, but the conflict series.
Okay.
That you're constantly making them think. And I've often thought about taking a chess clock and having people play their turns faster, just to see.
We actually do
happens.
that with Conflict of Heroes, that you have a chess clock and each have 20 minutes. And the player takes turn, hits it, then you have to do your thought, reactions, and everything, hit it. And the first person, either you win or you run out of time. And you'd be surprised how much stress that puts on the brain. But our Fog of War series, which we did, Strike of the Eagle, I've been working now with Brian Asklev for the past 3 years on the Korean War. And what Shortridge did there was phenomenal compared to his analysis of the situation and everything, and really pulling our bacon out of the fire versus what we'd been doing up to the point. And in that game, we're really taking a lot of the social political type of ramifications of what would have happened. It made military sense to nuke the border with China because at the time, the Americans saw that just as a weapon, a very effective weapon, and it didn't have the negative stigma that nuclear weapons have nowadays. But if we would have done that, what would have that done with our logistics and everything coming through Japan and everything, who would have just gone crazy and could have really screwed up our resources and logistics coming in to Korea at the worst time.
Now, I'm looking at your webpage, and I think we're going to get to one of the things I wanted to talk about. I don't see this game available. Is this a spoiler?
I'm learning now. I'm not going to talk too early because I've learned I'm too anal. I see so many war games coming out that are great war games that just suck because they don't suck. In my mind, they suck enough. And I shouldn't say that word because it's very crude, but that's how I feel when I look at it going, how can this company be putting out this trash that is underbaked, just wrong? The rules are horrible. And then you're playing and it's like broken, but it's got such a great foundation. Well, because they just rushed it through because they just need the money or whatever. But the problem is, if you put something out too early, it always sucks. And people always get on my case, you told us the game, it's been 4 years ago since you go, and I go, yeah, but we thought of new things and all that. And that's what happened with Korea. It was done 2 years ago, but I want to add more of what we're doing nowadays in learning, the lock and keying, that radiating going forward, so that when you're playing a historical event now, in every other game, it's like, what does it do now and change the situation? Now you play it and you never know how to radiate forward and change other things in the future. So every time you play it, it'll come out different. And that's what I want to put into that Fog of War after Strike of Eagle, the When Whales Fight, the Korean War. And then we've also now added the Trump era because it's just so interesting. What happened in the 50s and what's happening nowadays, it's like just change the names a little and it's almost the same politically, So and doing this. And then the next game we have in this series is, of course, Eastern Europe, the Ukraine, the Baltic countries, Lithuania and everything, and all the politics and everything going on there. Now that's going to be a much more difficult game to do correctly because of all the geopolitical things going on right now. And that's where I'm really trying to collect a lot of even local people to analyze that and put together a really good game where, one of the things one of my talks I gave a few years ago, where was it? That was in
Carlisle,
PA, yeah, at the War College, where I brought that up with, we bring just one little recon unit into Poland, into the Ukraine from the Polish border, from I think it was the 4th Army Brigade or whatever, and we bring it along this road. How do the Russians react? And as you know, everybody there was like, well, it was all military thinking. And the most, the thing would have been cut off gas and blame it on the Americans because they're right on one of the main gas lines. Just say, oh, as the Russians, we don't know what happened. Americans just sent in troops in the Ukraine, and all of a sudden the gas is going through. There's turmoil there. We don't know, but we'd like to help the Americans figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And just use the psychology of it,
Yeah.
And that's
so you're not going to give us any spoilers, huh?
No. And that's what I'm really fascinated on. And I'd love to do also the Chinese quotient, because China is just so, if you look at their history and look from the 1500s on and what they did in their psychology, how they think, and what Xi's doing right now, even how he's trying to control even these information moguls. I just heard what it was a big, they were supposed to have an IPO 2 weeks ago, and they just canceled it because he was becoming too much of an upstart and critiquing the local government and everything. I think the owner, Xi, XI, I don't know how you say that in Chinese.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating, the politics internally in China, and how China is just, with their world politics in Africa, in Asia, and in the Middle East, how they're just saying, hey, America's a big military player there. We're going to be subservient to them. We're going to play under their guideline. We're going to be under their umbrella. We're not going to go against them in any way. What we're going to do is we're going to go in there and do all the wheeling and dealing and get our internet in there, get our phone systems in there, get our infrastructure in there.
It sounds like somebody is wargaming the Belt and Road Initiative.
So that's the direction I want to go with that game. Yeah. Just to get players aware of, is it all military? And when we are confronted with this, is our instant reaction as a gamer to think with a military counter versus economics and other ways, So it's interesting the way the world politics are going right now. It's just fascinating. It's just
it is. We live in exciting times, don't we?
Yes, very exciting. Very exciting.
So let's see if Tyler or Dan, if you guys have any. Oh, it's just Dan now. See if you guys have any questions. Dan, if you have any questions, just type them in chat, or if you can mute yourself, feel free to talk, and you can ask the man himself questions. So, when I asked you this last time, if there's anything you can game that's not being gamed right now, what would it be? And you gave me a great answer back then. And I'm curious now, a year and a half later, it seems like, based on what you just said, you've actually gone off and you're starting to explore some things that I think would make fascinating game topics. Do you find, what's the harder part for you? And I'm setting you up with this question too. Coming up with the idea of what to game, or deciding how to gamify that event or that period or that era?
Building the engine. I mean, ideas are easy to come up with. I mean, how often have you come up with an idea, we should invent this? That would be cool.
Yeah.
You don't do anything, then someone else comes out with it and makes bagillions of money on it. You're going, damn, I thought of that. Ideas are easy. Pulling it through, that's the hard part. And, it's so easy for people to critique efforts that people have put in without, even if they're not that good. And before, when I'm like, it just ticks me off when I see some of the crappy games coming out. So much effort was put in to get it to that level already. That's where I'm like, why not just put in that little extra level?
Yeah.
But that could be me and the way I was raised, as an engineer and very precise and, in our family, everything.
I have academic OCD just like you. I get it. And that was an interesting comment somebody made where I'm trying to get folks within the military wargaming community into wargaming. And I sent them to a ton of websites. And I said, go to Academy Games. And this was something interesting. And it's not an insult. They go, he doesn't have a lot of games. I go, you're right. It's not GMT. It's not SPI. But all those games are great.
Thank you.
And it is one of the things I think I enjoy most about. I think I have almost all your games behind you. That I enjoy about your games. It's the replayability. They're great games. And I remember after we met last year, and a lot of people were like, hey, where is Conflict of Heroes? Where's that? When's that coming out?
Right there's the next one on the game table.
Yeah, I'll tip my hat into that one. And I said, look, this guy doesn't make bathtub gin, man. He makes fine wine. And the end result is it's worth it for these games to come out just because they're fun. And as soon as I got your version 3 rules, I changed Guadalcanal for that, and I played all the scenarios in Guadalcanal, and I played them again, and I realized, wow. I played them once or twice with version 2, version 3. This is a whole new decision set I have to make.
Yeah, Jim's actually trying to finish off the version 3 edition rules that we're going to post free online for people who have the second edition Guadalcanal. Well, everybody has second edition. But it already was using our newer hexing system and everything. So, and we're working on the solo for that also. It's just so different because when you're doing a European theater type game where it's Americans versus Germans or British or French or Canadians, whatever. I'm not allowed to say English anymore.
Yeah, why not?
British. I have to say British.
Oh, okay.
Not English. And because I got in a whole thing online with people because I was saying, here are the English units, and they go, there's nothing that fries my bacon more than people calling the British English. The British were made up of all these people. And I go, you know what? Most of my books are all in German. And I have here, the complete sets of, 5-volume of Division des Reich here, all in German. And nowhere are the English ever called Die Bretagne oder was immer.
No, but they knew when they were fighting against the Scots.
Yeah, das waren die Schotten oder die Engländer oder die Kanadier. It was always, they named them. They didn't group them together. So I said, I will be very conscientious. And I will say British, but in the games themselves, they will be marked as the English or whatever. And then I put online trying to find out, what did the French call the British? Did they call them the British? And boy, did the French come out, and none of them were nice names.
And if you're going to use members of the Canadians, the Australians, the Kiwis, they called them Pommies, and they still do to this day. And that's something too that I explain to people about you have the three West Eastern Front games, because I got to throw Poland in there, and then the Japanese game takes place in Guadalcanal. But the differences in the rules, the Russians play like Russians, the Japanese play like Japanese, and I like that in a game where I am making not decisions as me, because I make a lot of bad decisions, but just to get into that feel of that squad leader or that company commander that's trying to do this all arms fight in some of the scenarios. I love how those games challenge us. So I know that there's a new one coming out. If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But I know you spoiled it online a little bit. It was France 40.
Yes.
And so, okay, so in all fullness in advertising here is, I did play test the first scenario, but looking how in that game the French play like French, I found very interesting.
How the French do what now?
Play like French.
Well, yes, and it's and that's an interesting thing that we show the for example, the Panzer 4D.
Mm-hmm.
In France 1940, it has an incredible. It has, I think, a 5 blue, which means armor piercing attack value, whereas that exact same tank in 1941, Barbarossa and all that has a 0. And people go, that's stupid. How could they have it a year before, have all this anti-tank? It was their main battle tank and everything. And then a year later, it's like 0. I go, because
got better.
It's how it was used.
Yeah.
In France 1940, the Germans had crap, and they had to use a 75 millimeter round just to ring the bell of the Samoa or whatever tanks they were going against.
Yeah.
And it was used as a main tank unit, whereas then in Barbarossa, it was used as an infantry support because the Germans had made some advances, and this tank was no longer used as an anti-tank unit. So if we kept the same stats, players would play it like the potential of the unit instead of how it was played historically. And that's so difficult how to then implement the advanced French tanks and everything. And with people, they go, oh, the French, they didn't fight hard enough. They fought their asses off. It's that the guys in the front lines didn't get the support from higher up, or the French generals were 20 kilometers away, and they didn't even have a freaking radio.
Yeah, their tanks didn't have radios.
Well, even the command to the front lines weren't radio. And then if there were radios, 10th of them were Morse code radios. And here you've got a commander trying to do Morse code while aiming the gun, while giving his driver orders. No wonder the Germans, were saying.
So you spoiled the counters already, and I noticed that about the counters. They were on Facebook, folks. That you have to play the Panzer IV differently than you do. And I remember explaining to somebody that I taught Storms of Steel with, like, well, should I use that? No. You need a Panzer III. That's your tank killer. That's your tank killer. Well, what's the Panzer IV for? Well, the Panzer IV-D. There's very few board war games that you get into and discuss the differences between models of tanks that and then they actually play a role in the game.
And then the F2, and it went to town then, yeah.
And it's interesting as I was teaching the game of, wow. And then my friend said, you told me this wasn't going to be advanced squad leader. It's not. It plays very easily.
Yep.
And then we're playing it because he's got fear of advanced squad leaders, most of us do. And he goes, yeah, this is simple. But it's like, if I use that tank wrong, it's dead. I go, that's a true statement.
Yep. And it's interesting because what we're doing now with the ComOp series, which is company to battalion level, using the tactical decision-making games that Marine Corps had through the Marine Corps Association for their matrix training games. And what we're using that as a basis for and going forward, I was going to make it a more of a head-to-head and type game, but the more I'm thinking about that also is from the same viewpoint, where that was more of a, here's a situation, give us your prep ords, how would you deploy your units, what will your tactics be, and they'd send that in to have it arbitrated and given, yes, this worked, this wouldn't work, blah, blah, blah. And so there, we're actually looking at doing it just as a solo from the beginning on, make it a heavy solo game. And then the next step is with our solo, we're changing the solo, the way we're doing the solo in the future, like from our Agents of Mayhem. And Agents of Mayhem is such a phenomenal game. It's a 3-dimensional game. And that was based on our Fallujah urban combat game and we just took the units, and heavy weapons support became the Legion, in there, the Legion women with their fancy weapons from far away blowing stuff up, or their heavy golem was a heavy demolitions team and all that. And so that game's phenomenal. But what that game did so well, what Gunta did with that, with their campaigns, where it isn't you play this campaign and then if you win, go to this page and play that one, or if you lose, go to that one. No, you're playing it, and as you're taking objectives and you're doing stuff, and you gain intelligence, whatever, you're pulling these cards that are based with this, that are key and locked cards, that when that mission is over, your cards in the tactical information and the recon information that you have, and your I'm thinking English now.
I'm looking at the game online as we're talking.
Well, and your allies, and most people don't play the campaign because it's such incredible deep thing, and most people play it, go, oh, it's Saints Row universe, Agents of Mayhem, and they're just guys who want to do this head-to-head, attack each other, instead of the subtlety of this campaign. But you're taking these and you're building the next mission just from what both players happened to them so far, and you're deciding where you want to go, what you want to do. So this is what I'm doing now in the future campaigns for the solo games. Also, you're going to be playing this game. Excuse me, I all of a sudden got hiccups.
Oh, don't worry about it, because we're going to run out of time soon. But
okay, but you're playing this game now like you're in the movie. You're just playing it. You're doing mission to mission to mission, that as you're going, you don't know what's going to happen. The actual battle that happened around you is influencing you. You're playing this game, and you can play it over a month or two, playing maybe 8 to 10 engagements. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're getting orders from your Oberkommando saying, pull back. We've been flanked on the right side. We've lost the city there because this and this. Pull back to this river. You failed.
Wow.
You're like, shit, I thought I was winning, but the overall, what was happening, and then it all starts making sense from your after action report and everything. So it's and every time you play it, it'll play different as you're trying different things, because it's that rippling forward.
I've seen it. It's not my genre, but I may have to try it. And I know somebody that owns the game. So.
Oh, Agents of Mayhem?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how there's a lot of things that we did in there that are really dictating how we're doing other stuff going forward. And granted, Agents of Mayhem was, unfortunately, the company got bought out right during our Kickstarter, but it did really well. It's still rated around 8 on Board Game Geek. But that got us Stellaris, and Stellaris is the #1 4X space game, which is phenomenal. Oh, we're doing on the 19th of this month, our Reality Shift game is coming out. Notice the race cubes and all. See how the camel is stuck on the side?
Yeah.
So it's like based on Tron. That gave us the idea, this Tron game. But you're racing, and as you're racing on each of your turns, you're augmenting the reality to your advantages. So this other guy could be racing towards the finish line, and all of a sudden you augment the reality, and one of these cubes comes over and crushes them, giving you then this cube on top of this other cube to run along the side, race, and get to the finish line. So it's one of these games that's
you blow me away with these things.
And it's going to be one of these where you can so screw over. It's one of the funniest games because it's just made to everybody who loves racing games. All of a sudden, it's a racing game where you're racing but screwing all your opponents so bad by
There's nothing wrong with that. That's half the fun of the game.
So that's coming on the 19th. Then Stellaris is going to be in March of 2021. That's by Paradox Games, the big Stellaris, incredible game. And all those, everybody plays that or war game. I mean, that's a very high level, incredible game. Our France 1940, we're going to be putting on pre-order here pretty soon. I want to share my screen real quick.
Uh-oh. I would love to see whatever you have to show.
And let me go on here. Let me know if that shows.
Yep.
Okay. So Pavlos Germides, let me make this a little bigger. I don't know if you can see these actual, real, historic pictures of the Germans invading in Kent, the Kent landings.
So is there a game?
Well, this is going to be one of the expansions people pre-order that we want to give them the, I don't know if I can go out, but what Pavlos did with the artwork on this, you know, this is all, he manufactured this all of Germans coming on Kent with all their landing craft.
So Sea Lion's coming.
Yeah, or another good one, which I really like, is here, the Home Guard versus, and he makes them look like old pictures of the Home Guard with a Panzer here coming up, fighting the Tommies in England. So we're going to be taking one of the expansions are new boards and everything that'll go with France 1940 and exploring Seelöwe and seeing what could have happened if the resources and just concentration would have been against England. And not only the land, but also in the channel battles.
Wow.
So we're really doing some fun stuff with that. So this is another picture, and these are all going to be pictures in the game. And another one here is another really fun one. As the German landing crafts are coming in, the air battles going on. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this one.
With a tiger moth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what it's called. Yeah, tiger moth over beach.
Yeah.
So we're having a lot of fun with this. So France 1940, I think, is going to be very different because also both sides have their own mission book. So when you're setting up and when you're doing things, you are, let me stop share. You are you're going with what your recon is. So you're setting up the game based on what you see, but often what you see is not what's really there. So that's why we did separate rule books for both players.
That's it. I'm calling you up every month just to catch up on this fun stuff because you get me so spun up, man. And you know, it's been too long since we've spoke, but we're supposed to bother you for an hour.
Yes.
Because I got to give it time for other people.
Oh my goodness.
No, that's fine. But this will be on YouTube either tonight or tomorrow night. You could find the great game designer, Uwe, at academygames.com. I'm not saying this because I like him or he has pictures on me, but
not very likable.
Yeah, but when you go on and you look at any of the games and you're just not sure, there's none of the, I have not played one of your games. I've said, I wish I didn't buy it. And that is from owning 2 complete series.
We're very lucky. We only have 2 games that have not sold over 15,000 copies.
Which 2 was that?
The first one was Strike of the Eagle because nobody, and it's one of my favorite games. Nobody's interested in the Soviet-Polish War of 1919-1920. I think it's one of the most important segments of the 20th century to be aware of because it set up the entire European thought process leading to World War II.
And that game you can't even get. Do you still have that in stock?
We still have a few in stock when people order direct, but we don't have many. And we're waiting because that series, next in series is the Korean War. So once we do the Korean War, we're going to do that. And we also have that already almost completely done, the North African campaign also.
I find that conflict awesome. And I'm actually helping develop another follow-on to the Blood and Valor game. I helped well, I created the forces for it. I did all the research,
Yep.
but it's a great war game. And I said, as we expand to the Eastern Front, you got to have the whites, the reds, the greens. You have to have the Polish-Soviet War, the Polish-Green War. You have to have that crazy guy that I found out, the German, he was like a captain or major, started his own army in the Baltics.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that one. What year was that?
He did it with Freikorps troops. I will send you the background information I have for that because I just found this fascinating. And
none of my relatives. So
yeah, wrong part of Germany. But it's such fascinating history. And if you try any of the games, trust me, you will love them. I am excited for what's coming out next. I really am.
well, thank you.
But I don't know which. But I want to once again thank you for attending the roundtable, and please come back anytime. And I got to interview more often because I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight.
I'd love to go through some of also what we discussed before, some of even the modern day tactical things and even the psychology and everything. How can we bring more of the psychological aspects of combat, or no, not combat, of conflicts and confrontations that totally take the combat out of it, but get into the psychological part of it? And would those be considered war games or not?
Sure, I think so. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me turn off the recording so the guy that's on in the channel next can start. But once again, thank you. Now, if you want to know what he and I talked about afterwards, you're going to have to ask Dan. And once again, thank you guys very much.
Thanks for having me.
AcademyGames.com, and we'll see you soon.